This is an incident, if we take the best case scenario, one computer was infected and say we get through this whole process,
Right.
We're going to talk about, you find you stopped it with one computer, you're still down for days.
Stunning. Welcome to Learning Through Technology, a K12 EdTech podcast proudly presented by STS Education. I'm Alex Inman, founder of Educational Collaborators.
And I'm Bob Cerruti, founder of the EduTech Group. We're here to bring educators together, helping them unlock the full potential of learning through technology.
Tune in every other week as we connect with education leaders and dive deep into topics that matter to you, delivering actionable ideas straight to your school. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex, I get to lead off today. Did you know I was largely a leadoff hitter when I played baseball in high school and college? You did not know that.
No, I did not. And now that I know it, is it actually true?
It is actually true. And it would be something you would know if you ever let me talk during the podcast. So today I have an idea to talk about a cybersecurity incident here in our second episode for Cybersecurity Awareness Month of October. And so I get to lead off again. It's like the old days. So one of the things that we have a problem with cybersecurity, and maybe people in general, is we don't want to talk about our failures. In a cybersecurity, a successful attack is a failure.
Right.
But it's something that we can learn from, because we all know, all of us without our heads buried in the sand, know it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, but when. It's too lucrative and too easy to be attacked. But we're going to go through, I've spent some time talking to colleagues who have been through cybersecurity attacks. I've also spoken to the insurance companies that they've dealt with when they've had cybersecurity insurance, the attorneys who dealt with the legal ramifications and fallout, as well as the cybersecurity experts who worked in the remediation and reclamation of networks and devices, and hope to share that data with our audience so that they have an idea of what to expect in the event that it comes to them. And hopefully they see where things didn't work out for these schools, that they can make improvements in their own systems and programs to be better.
Right. And, as you kind of laid out, I've seen some of the stuff that you've put together in talking with all these customers about this, and some, even though they suffered an incident, some of their responses are really quite wise, right? And so I think we're going to see some real nuggets of, I need to do that, and also some, I need to avoid that. And for those of you who have actually suffered an incident, I think you're going to find some of this fairly familiar. But I think this is going to be a fun journey to, maybe not fun, but I think a very valuable and informative journey for all of our listeners. So Bob's going to take on the role of basically the expert detective who's worked with all of the schools on this particular fictitious incident and or compiled incident based in truth. And then I'm going to be the interviewer, kind of understanding this scenario. So this should be fun. All right, Bob. So where does our story begin?
So I think we should start before the beginning. How's that?
Oh, gosh. You see, I was all ready to break into the Sound of Music, let's start at the Vic, but you changed it. But I somehow found a way to get a little Julie Andrews in there anyways. I'm sorry, Bob, you were saying?
I think what you meant to say was, I'm sorry, Bob, I managed to talk again. So before the beginning, all of these people that I talked to, all of these tech directors, superintendents, board members, they're all smart people. Diligent and smart, know the world they live in and know that they had to take action in order to protect their schools and their communities. You and I like to have a little fun with this. You call this a fun journey, but it's, as a tech director myself, I get that feeling in my stomach. I feel nauseous thinking about what people go through with these attacks, because it's horrifying.
Yeah.
To see these things happen.
So, all right. So well-intentioned, intelligent, thoughtful people, right? Generally think that they're taken care of, generally think that they've got everything kind of squared away cybersecurity-wise, or are they all living with that pit?
So I don't know that they feel, and I can say this from my own experience too, and maybe it's just the way I think, I never feel prepared enough. I never feel like I'm ready for the test. I never feel like, I always feel like if I had another hour before the presentation, I'd be better prepared. If I had, and that's the same with these people. If they had, more time in their schedule, and we all know how hard that is to come by for technology departments in school. If they had a little more money, if they had, we all work through, I think I tell this to superintendents and heads of schools all the time. There are no problems. There is only money. It's a saying we have in racing, right? If you have unlimited money, you don't have problems. You can fix it. But that's not the case in our world or anybody else's. So there's a compromise to be made. How much can you afford to spend to protect yourself? How many people can you dedicate to protecting your school? And that, we've seen it recently, unfortunately. There's not just cybersecurity. There's physical security. There is security on buses. There is safety in the buildings. Not everybody is in a brand new building. People have old buildings. They have old HVAC systems, and they have rising health insurance, and they've just got a million things on their plate. So I get it. Generally, these people thought that they were doing what they could with what they had.
Okay. Fair.
They knew there was more they could do. So I think that would be a fair representation of the people I spoke to who are in the technology director, superintendent, head of school chair.
Okay. So these clients, or this client, we'll call it this client just for the sake of sort of the singularity of the story, right? Feels like they are taking care of things as well as they can and are satisfied with sort of their position in the cybersecurity posture world. And then what happens?
Well, one day they get that screen that says, you've been blocked from your system. Your data has been encrypted. In this instance, in our composite of conversations for this is a ransomware attack, which is the most common. And that is when this threat actor, bad actor, encrypts your data and wants a ransom for it, for the key to unencrypt it.
And so in this scenario, was this a phishing attack via email? Did email somebody in the IT staff, a privileged data user? What happened?
So it's varied. So we can pretend like it's any of those, right? We all have got those emails before that look like they come from a superintendent, or they look like they come from payroll. We've all got those emails. So you can pretend to be anybody clicking on the email. It could be a server that's not been updated, and there's a vulnerability within your server operating system, or firmware on a switch, or a problem at your firewall. In any of these manners of the way in, I think I named 4 of dozens. You end up with data that's locked and encrypted, and that's the oh crap moment, right?
When pit of the stomach,
where you realize something's going on here. So in nearly all of these, in the advice that we've seen from there, is you get that device disconnected. Now you get it disconnected from the network because you could be looking at the first or the last or in the middle of it. And of course it goes very fast. It's going to go much faster than people go. Disconnected from the network. Now, if you have the appropriate EDR, or you're one of those schools that's running a security operations center, that might be as far as it goes. You have one computer that's encrypted, and the rest of your network, after careful examination, is okay. And if that's you, great. I mean, that's the best case scenario. Once you've seen that screen, is that the EDR did its job, or MDR, and your security operations center or their software did their job in stopping it there. From there, though, you've got to shut down your network to find out where it's at and where it's been. And
so whether you had risk mitigation software that said, I killed it, or not, if you know what got through, you stop everything. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that seems to be in talking to the experts. And from my own, if it were my network, my school, that's what I would do. And this doesn't happen from 9 to 5 or from 7:30 to 3. It could happen at any point.
Right. Right.
So the to me, in these conversations, and my own thought is, you've got to go through it all. Every computer has to be scanned. Every server, the network has to be interrogated. And that means stopping everything. The first step is cutting off internet traffic.
That's what I was going to ask.
Nobody can get in or out.
I mean, you mentioned disconnect the device, right? Immediately disconnect the device from the network. But then where do you go? And so saying shut off the whole water system, right? Like shut off the whole valve and go and disconnect internet first. So then now you've covered both ends. You've got, your device, and you've got the access to the internet, and that's cut off. Now, do you go to the devices or the servers or the infrastructure? Where do these scans begin? What do you do in this during the stoppage?
So once you've disconnected from the world, you've cut off that internet. I think it used to be like the projection rooms in movie theaters, right? There was an axe next to the the rope that held up the screen, right? You pick up in case of emergency, cut rope, and it would swing down in the fire and go any further. So that's probably where firewall comes from, right? But that's what you do. At that point, I think you start doing things in parallel. Now you notify head of school, superintendent, because there's a whole communication aspect here, because you've essentially stopped instruction.
Everything.
In today's one-to-one environment. Those Chromebooks, those iPads, they don't connect to the internet anymore. They're probably not very useful for you.
Right.
So that's the two-pronged attack. Is then what you found out, what I learned in this, in not knowing and not being through it, is then that head of school, chief risk officer, whoever that person is, calls the insurance company and says, we've suffered an attack.
So let me stop you there for just a second. So you didn't mention an incident response plan. And so how common are incident response plans? And is that what's going to guide you down these steps? Or where does an incident response plan come into this play?
Man, Alex, you are good at this interviewing thing. I totally forgot about an incident response plan. So we're all told that we should have an incident response plan.
Right.
And it's interesting. This is a personal sort of thing. Just a week or two ago, I had a treasurer contact me in one of the schools we work with and say, our insurance company says we have to have an incident response plan. The auditors are coming in next week. Can we get something together? And I said, are you right? Are you kidding? An incident response plan is not something you're going to throw together between now and the auditor showing up on Monday. It's just not. Well, Alex, Educational Collaborators has worked to help schools develop incident response plans. It's a many page document that involves, well, you tell us, you're better at this than I am. What goes into that incident response plan and who's involved?
Yeah. So first off, there are some state agencies that have created incident response plans for like districts, right? And so those are a great place to start, because they at least kind of give you sort of a format, right, of what to do. But yeah, it's a document that identifies the risks associated with the incident, right? And then says, if this is a symptom of that, then here's your response plan, or here are the responses that you need to take, kind of in the order that they need to go. And yeah, first is, as you said, sort of mitigate the risk by cutting them both ends, right? And you've done that. And then you really need to get immediately into the communication piece of that. And that's where I'm sort of stealing your thunder. This is where I'm sort of bringing us back to our story, where we start reaching out to the superintendent, executive director, head of school, and then we start to engage the lawyers, the insurance, et cetera.
So that's correct. And you're not really stealing my thunder. Imagine coming up. So we've talked about the incident response plan being pages and a dozen or more people being involved in it. And most schools don't have that. They just don't.
Okay.
And in every one of the schools I talked to, they did not have an incident response plan.
They did not.
That they could revert.
So you're crafting the response as
making it up as they go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
So for what you've said about what is involved in an incident response plan is exactly right, of course. So there's, everything from contacting, if you have other technology providers, some schools have outside for monitoring their network or working in their network. They have inside staff. For another thing, you might have technology integrationists. You might have an educational service center or a county office of education that's, hosting your servers. There are a lot of people this touches right away. So you can't go serially. You have to go parallel.
Gotcha.
So
that makes sense.
While the staff is disconnecting from network, here's something that most people won't think of is, one, if your phone system's a cloud-based solution and it doesn't have its own internet connection, your phone system's down now.
Right.
If your PA system is voice over IP and you've shut the network down, you can't make an announcement.
Right.
So you end up with, in those instances, now we have lots of schools that I work with personally that have, technology from 1950. There is no corruption of the vacuum tubes in the PA system, but these are real problems in schools that have these solutions, or no bells,
right,
or no clocks, or there's lots that go on there. Transportation, there's so much that goes in there that's immediately affected. So you have one set of announcements or instructions or communication to staff and students inside the building. Then you have communication to your insurance company. You have to have communication to parents about a plan. Is there a plan for what you're going to do with these students? Now, it's not like the places under physical attack, fortunately,
Right.
and it's not on fire. So you don't have to get people out right away. But your instructional day, even if everything in a best case scenario, your instructional day is practically over because you've taken the network down to investigate. So that call is made to the insurance company. At that point, the insurance company tells you, and this was in every instance, stop. Once you get everything disconnected, stop.
Stop what?
We will stop everything. Don't touch anything. Don't start the investigation yourself. Don't turn on any computers. Stop. Wait for further instructions.
Okay. So don't even start, like you mentioned, when you disconnect things, start scanning the computers, but not at this point. The insurance said, stop. Don't scan the computers. Don't
do anything. That's exactly right. So that was surprising to me, not something that I had thought of. That was in everyone that I talked to who got that direct communication from the insurance company. That's what they heard. Stop. We will engage a company specifically for this purpose, and you will get further instructions from them.
That's valuable insight right there, actually, because I think a lot of people are going to just follow their instincts to start like disconnecting and scanning, running patches on their servers, all that kind of stuff. And the feedback was, did they give you a rationale? Is this because that's what these people are sort of insured to do, and that's why you're supposed to stop?
So I did not get or hear specifics from it. I think if I had to infer, I would think it's to do no harm. Like,
I see. Don't make it worse.
If you start doing anything.
Yeah.
So here is the piece that really struck me with that is an example of this happened, say a Tuesday morning or something, and you contact the insurance company at noon on Tuesday and you think, your world's on fire as a tech director.
Yeah.
You've got people running all over. You've got people going down the halls saying you're trying to figure out how long school is going to be out. And the insurance company tells you don't do anything. And then that response from that company is not minutes or hours away. You think of like, if I call the police, they show up in a few minutes, right?
Right.
I call the fire truck. That company doesn't get back to you for a couple of days. And during those days, you're out of business.
And did the insurance company give you any indication that this was going to be you're down for multiple days so that the schools could create the contingency plan and communicate with families, et cetera?
So I don't believe they were given any kind of timeline then. And I'm not sure that an insurance company could even give you a timeline. They don't know the nature. They know, and an insurance company is not an expert, right? That's right. Anybody who has bought cyber insurance and has asked your broker, is this considered two-factor authentication or is this considered an immutable backup?
Right.
They have no idea. And all the insurance company knows is this is the company we contract with for this. So they're waiting on that company too, and they don't have a timeline. So based on the conversations I've had, expect a day or two before you meet with the cybersecurity people who are going to first figure out what the damage is, give you steps for doing it, and then start the remediation. And this is an incident, if we take the best case scenario, one computer was infected, and say we get through this whole process we're going to talk about, you find you stopped it with one computer, you're still down for days.
Stunning. I mean, that is amazing. And you think about if you didn't have an incident response plan, first, tech director is going to have a psychological meltdown waiting for this, right, to happen. But what's happening in the classroom, right? Like, I don't know when I'm going to get this back, when I'm going to get, I don't know how long this is going to be without kids, or if I've got kids, I don't know how long I need to plan for instruction without technology, right? And so I have talked to schools that as part of their incident response plan for cybersecurity, teachers are asked to stay either 2 weeks ahead in their curriculum design or to have at least 2 weeks of, what could be anytime lessons, right? Lessons that you could use over a 2-week period to continue to reinforce standards, but without having to fit within necessarily the scope and sequence, right? And, that's a nice piece of insurance as a teacher to know that if somebody tells me I'm shutting down, I am ready for instruction and we don't have to stop school, right? Like they can bring in emergency phones and that kind of stuff, which I always kept, even when I had a voice over IP system, I kept one plain old telephone, one pot line, right, that I could use for emergency communication.
I'll lighten the mood by saying I love that Alex threw out POTS is his technical plain old telephone service. Like, way to go, Alex. That was cutting edge back in your day. I know. So speaking of way back, I made a comment when talking to somebody, perhaps, sarcastically flippant, it might be Bob, where suddenly you're thrown back into 1995. And the person that I was speaking to said, it's thrown back to 1995, except for, 1995, we had textbooks. We don't have textbooks in this instance.
Right.
So it's not 1995.
It's not, right. It's much harder than 20 some years ago, just shutting off the internet. No, this is a big deal. So much of our life is built around that. But that's, as I was, talking about the POTS line for also having for my elevators, just I needed another reason to throw that lingo in, is there are safety and operational concerns just as there are instructional concerns, right? And unless so in your school's cases, did they shut down for like a week or so, or did they find alternative ways to maintain school while you guys dealt with this?
So one thing to make clear here is these are schools that I spoke to. I don't want anybody asking me, Bob, which one? I don't want my schools to be like, Bob, which one of your schools?
Yeah, I know we
say that, right.
We're protecting those. We're protecting those for whom we've gotten information, but these are real stories that we are making sort of a story.
That's correct. So the schools that I spoke to largely continued on with instruction, maybe with a day off. They continued on with instruction. Now, obviously, the fidelity of that instruction would be impacted based on, you said work 2 weeks ahead, but most are not working 2 weeks ahead, both with technology and without technology. They're just 2 weeks ahead with their lesson plan development. So
that's true. Yeah.
So they stopped perhaps for a day. So it didn't stop instruction typically, but think about the things that it does impact. You talked about the elevator. If you have a modern elevator, it's on the network. If you have access control with key fobs, it's on the network. Your video cameras are on the network. And a school might make the decision that they don't feel safe having school without security cameras, or they may not feel safe with access control by a key. Now, in most modern access control systems, there's a fail-safe where the data is stored at the panel if it's disconnected from the network.
Yeah.
So a more modern system would work, but that's not everybody.
Right.
And it may be that you don't trust it, or maybe that you need to shut that down too. But the technology tentacles are in everything.
Yeah.
Include, we control the heating and cooling in buildings on the network. So they did largely continue with instructional days.
All right.
But the big one, like payroll, is done on the network, and there's a lot to be there, more than most people think of. Technology in the network are a part of now.
Yeah. Well, the only good news is now you have a misery-loss company and you have empathy, and now the tech director is not the only one who gets a knot in the pit of their stomach when you suffer an incident, right? Because now it touches everybody, right? So how long does this last? How did the departments deal with, like you said, instruction continued? It just continued without computers. How did payroll get done? How did safety occur? And whose job is that? Is that the tech director's job while they're also working with the insurance people and all this? How does this all get dealt with?
So then maybe, we could jump ahead a bit. So fortunately, in none of the schools I spoke to was their payroll hosted on a server within their location. It was somebody else's solution.
Okay.
So we had to come up with clean devices and payroll or treasurer move off site with clean devices to start processing that. But now they're doing this without the spread. If you kept your spreadsheet on your computer and it wasn't backed up in the cloud, or it wasn't in a backup that could be restored immediately, you don't have that spreadsheet to work from now.
Yeah.
If you had documents that you kept only on your computer, you don't have access to those documents now to do that. So it becomes a longer process. And transferring funds could be affected because now you're not doing it from the IP address that the bank is looking for, or you don't have the certificate on the computer that you have, or the bank doesn't, there are a million things that could come up from. These are just some of the things that we spoke about when I talked to these people. So that's where you start in trying to get your payroll together and get those necessary functions going. Back into the attack, you have that meeting with attorneys, with the insurance company, and with the technology company that's going to, and you go to every computer and load their tool. And it's typically a tool from, a CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or one of those providers, and that tool is run on every computer after they're imaged.
Oh,
Now,
so you image and then you run it.
Think about how many devices you have in a school.
Yeah.
If that's done on PCs or Macs.
I think most of our listeners know, but when we say image a computer, what we're saying is basically wipe everything off it and replace it with sort of like the fresh, clean configuration that you have for the computer, right? So you're blowing everything away, starting from scratch, and then running a utility. I imagine because it's looking at the firmware, like beyond the things that go beyond your image, right?
Right. So in these instances, that company gives you a checklist. These are the things you have to do, and they include imaging computers, and then scanning and rebuilding your firewall from scratch, and then having them test your firewall before you reconnect to the internet. And in some of the but this company, that's helping you with remediation, in none of these instances did they provide people on site. So your tech department is imaging. Some of the schools use students to do a part of the work.
Yeah.
Some of them hired temps. Other ones got help from their county office. But there is no army coming in to do all of this for you.
That's not part of your typical insurance response, right? Is that what you're saying?
Not in what I saw in the conversations I had. Now, perhaps there are carriers like that, but I did not.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would cost.
One interaction. Right. So then those tasks are completed. At the same time, you have the attorneys dealing with these people want money. This isn't a joyride. This is how they make money. So at the same time, you have the attorneys dealing with the malicious attack with the ransom portion of that. At the same time, you're trying to determine, what's the damage to the data going through that checklist, what data has been compromised or released. In many instances, you'll get a bit of data back from the attacker to prove they have your data, and they're hoping to show you that it's data that is worth you paying to keep secret. So it's not leaked, it's not released on the dark web.
Got it.
So you've got still all of these are going on in parallel.
So how do you know?
Go ahead.
How do you know what, aside from them showing you this is what's been, we have this, how do you know what they have and what they don't? And who figures that out?
So this is my inference from these conversations with attorneys, is they know what information is of value, the attackers do. And they give you the most valuable stuff they have, but just a piece of it. So maybe they have every employee's name and address and social security number. Well, they'll give you 5 of them to show you with social security number, we have this data.
Sure.
And that's where the attorney comes in. Is this worth paying for? Is this something that is not, is this just public information? If it has a list of names, that's not privileged information that needs to be protected.
Yeah.
If it has social security numbers or identifiable information, then the attorney and the board, the head of school will make that decision as to what they do about it. So you've got that going on in parallel with your cleaning and imaging of hardware,
right?
Which is also in parallel with are our backups safe while the clock is ticking,
right?
And school is being impacted, and you're setting up temporary operations in a third site so that you can manage payroll and transportation, perhaps, or whatever else you need to do. So that is the next steps. Now, if you are lucky enough to have good backup, you may not have to pay the ransom. If you don't have a good backup, I can't tell you what your attorney will tell you, whether you pay the ransom or the insurance company says we'll pay the ransom. But that's a very real possibility. There are entities, schools, cities that pay the ransom to get their data back and to hopefully not have it released.
Right.
So backups, immutable backups, offsite backups.
Sure.
So that's all things to be considered.
Yeah, that's a crucial thing. So, in terms of the backup piece of it, what do you recommend, or what are you learning that your customers had that served them well, or what did they have that served them poorly? What's the recommendation with regards to data backup?
So the world has seemed to have adopted the 3-2-1, which is 3 copies of the backup, 2 locations, 1 offsite. So I think I got that right.
Sounds right.
So yeah, right. So if you have that, you are likely to have a backup that is restorable.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
the other thing to keep in mind is none of this is snap your fingers. Just because you have a backup doesn't mean restoration happens right now. And if it's off-site, by definition, you can't start restoring from it until you get your network and your devices clean. So you have to get your devices clean. You have to test your firewall. Then you bring up your network. Then you start restoring from backup. It's time consuming. It's human resource time consuming or dollar consuming. You're not shedding, even when you're successful.
Yeah.
Not having to pay the ransom. There is a price to be paid, and it's significant.
So once you suffer it, see it, communicate it, deal with the lawyers, deal with the insurance, deal with the technology team, basically rebuild your entire network after you shut everything off and you brought it back in. Are you done, or is there more?
Well, one thing I want to make clear is all of these steps you don't control. The attorney signs off, the insurance company signs off, the cybersecurity consultant sign off. Like you do, then you check in. Then you do more, then you check in. And I didn't have anybody tell me that any of those were unresponsive, or it took time. We waited forever for the attorney. But you do, I imagine, there is some time in there, right? You've got 3 different entities to sign off on the next step.
Right.
So it's not going to be back up tomorrow. It's not going to be back up the next day. So your question about you get the clear, we've been through every device, the devices that we couldn't image or we couldn't save, we had, or that you couldn't make a determination on, they stay off the network. But say once you've got the stuff is clean and you have had your firewall tested and you reconnect to the network, then you start working from there. I talked to people who had laptops that were used for like the ransom node, that they had to keep the ransom node. That laptop will never get used again. Yeah, because they won't image it, but they won't throw it. They won't. They don't trust it to ever put it on the network again. Yeah. So, or maybe it's a reminder: "Thou shalt be diligent." But those are real things that happen. So if your data isn't, I won't get into the details of how the a ransom would be paid to get the decryption key. Even then, this is my speculation. You have to check that data. Like you have to make sure that it doesn't have another, that there's not a bomb built into it that's going to go off and encrypt your data again. Right. So if you do have good backups and you're restoring them, you have days to restore that. And you may have data like we spoke about with you're backing up servers immutably, offsite that's already encrypted, you're fine. But like we talked about with the accounts payable or payroll, if they're working from spreadsheets that were only on that computer and not backed up anywhere, it's gone. It's got to be rebuilt or you've got to start over. I don't know that it's ever done.
Are you ready to revolutionize your classroom? Join us at FETC 2025, the premier conference for education technology, from January 14 to 17 at the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida. Connect with thousands of educators, discover innovative tools, and gain insights to enhance your teaching. Register by December 13th to take advantage of our early bird pricing and use promo code TechLearn2025, no spaces, for an additional 10% off. Visit fetc.org to register now.
ViewSonic is your go-to technology partner for engaging students, fostering collaboration, and elevating learning outcomes. Offering a broad array of future-ready audiovisual solutions, training, and tools that adapt to your school's changing needs. ViewSonic is more than a brand. It's your educational edge. Explore the possibilities today at viewsonic.com/edu.
Imagine a future where students can access tools that spark learning, growth, and creativity. At Lenovo, our K12 solutions are designed to create a world where EdTech tools are safe and secure, engaging and easy to use, and built for productivity wherever learning takes place. We partner with customers and value lasting relationships. We work closely with you to assess your needs, evaluate options, and customize solutions. We understand the dynamics and trends shaping K12 today and tomorrow and how they affect your specific situation. We can help you plan wisely to deploy and scale solutions that will deliver the best student and teacher experiences and improve learning outcomes. We do this all while implementing the right education technology for your use case and budget. Visit us at the link in the show notes below.
Hey there, it's Sophia, executive producer for the show. You know those moments when the episode ends and you're thinking, man, I wish we could talk more about this. Well, guess what? We can. We got this amazing community over on LinkedIn. It's where we share all the good stuff, sneak peeks, cool resources, and quick activities to try out in your school. So here's what I want you to do. Grab your phone, head to LinkedIn, and search for our Learning Through Technology podcast page. Hit that follow button, and boom, you're in. Can't wait to see you there.
So what lessons get learned in that journey that get implemented right after? Some of the, you mentioned at the beginning, let's kind of bring this full circle. At the beginning, people felt like they were doing what they could do within their means and were satisfied. And then you go through something like that, which helps you understand what you did not understand and the work that you had to do. What lessons get learned from this experience?
So I think the first lesson that gets learned, and is the same for all of us, is it can happen to you. When it does happen to you, you learn that it can happen to you. Whether it is somebody who smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, or they don't exercise the way they should, or whatever. It's kind of like future Bob might have a problem, but today Bob wants a Big Mac. You realize that you're going to be future school district that's attacked.
Yeah.
You're going to be future superintendent who has to deal with the fallout. You're going to be future tech director who has to go through how this happened. I think that's the biggest lesson. When I talk to schools about cybersecurity, not about these incidents, but just how to prepare, there's no 100% prepare. There's not a device that you can buy, plug it in, and now your cybersecurity is taken care of. And I think a lot of companies sell like that.
Yeah. Well,
it's
well, I was going to say, I know there's no 100%, but, do schools usually kind of have as part of that, now that I know my future self, do they have a kind of come to Jesus about like their posture or their policies or their solutions?
So it's a good question. I say that because I asked that question, like, what would you do differently, or what are you doing differently?
Right.
And every one of them, I was going to say take cybersecurity more seriously, and I don't think that would be fair. They were taking it seriously already. I think much like the purpose of this episode is that they realize all the ramifications. And a lot of the stuff, I've done this 20 years, a lot of stuff I had no idea about until I started talking to them about what would happen in these events. You've got a long history of working with schools and doing cybersecurity assessments and audits.
Yeah.
What about you, Alex? What did I learned this away from you. You learned this in talking to me now. In case people don't realize, we're clearly unscripted and when we talk. So what do you take away from this with your old tech director hat on?
Well, I mean, if I went through the journey that you just described, the very first thing I would say is, I would ask, did we actually have the right kind of insurance to provide us the right kind of supports that we needed? And then in the same breath, I would be saying, we have to have an incident response plan, because the time, energy, and effort spent on us building this as a whole, or as we went along, cost way more and undermined our ability to deliver on our mission and our value as a school, right? And the other part too is, even independent of that, the anxiety that parents, teachers, students feel, administrators, tech teams feel by going through this and not having an incident response plan is, it takes a toll, right? On your ability to deliver on all that work that you had to do, right? And so I think that would be probably where I would go is, where do we have the safety net that we need? And maybe that's technologies, maybe that's insurance. And then, and then do I have a plan, right, for next time? Have we prepared ourselves for that? Is that in line with your investigations?
It is. I tell you, just in talking to people about it, it took a toll thinking about the things that you don't know. And now we know, and we have started implementing ourselves. But you've said it over and over again, and of course you're correct. Cybersecurity is not a technology problem.
Yeah.
And it can't just be a technology problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That community is necessary, and the role that everybody plays is crucial. I mean, the story that you told, and thank you for sharing that, Bob, and kind of going through how it touched really almost every aspect of the school or district is really, there aren't very many things, aside from natural disasters that have that kind of impact. And it has it in a much sort of sneaky way. So, Bob, this was great. thanks for, the homework that you did for this was pretty monumental. And I really appreciate you kind of walking us through this from the lens of the customer as we went through this. So we have one more episode in our Cybersecurity Month, and we want to make sure that you tune in for that. And that's actually one of Bob's customers. And he's going to talk about some of the stuff that he's doing at his school. He's also one of my customers too. Bob, thanks for all the work and thanks for sharing all that with our listeners.
I'm glad you let me talk a little, Alex. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks.
Learning Through Technology, a K12 EdTech podcast, is brought to you by STS Education, a Pacific OneSource company. To learn more about how educators can leverage technology to drive successful educational outcomes, check us out at www.stsed.com. Connect with us by searching for Learning Through Technology in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. On behalf of the team at STS Education, thanks for joining us.